Hello, my name is Shireen Bell. I am a third-year PhD student and have completed my candidacy exams. I am now preparing for my research proposal for oral defense. My research topic title is changing slightly, but my focus remains the same. I am a nursing instructor at Red Deer Polytechnic in Red Deer, Alberta, and I have a background as a registered nurse in a variety of acute care practice areas. As an educator, I love working with students and I'm passionate about student success. And as a result, I am exploring resilience in ethnoculturally diverse undergraduate nursing students, including Indigenous, Black, and racialized persons. I will provide a brief overview of my experience with the candidacy exam process. So choosing my committee members in collaboration with my advisors, I have two co-advisors actually, Dr. Donna Martin and Dr. Judith Scanlon, and both were very, very instrumental in guiding me in the selections process. I participated by searching for potential members. I created a table of these potential members, including their faculty affiliation, research focus areas, whether they were a U of M faculty, which department did they belong with, and whether or not they were from another university. And of course, also their contact information so we could follow up easily. I reside in Alberta, so at first we tried to get someone external that also resided in Alberta, so I would have someone geographically closer to me as a potential person for collaboration. But the FGR process in obtaining that external person from another university did not fit the process timeline that I was looking at for writing my candidacy exam, because it involved a little more paperwork to obtain someone from an external institution. But in all, I didn't find that the selections process for my thesis committee was too cumbersome. We could do most of it by communicating between the co-advisors and myself, along with potential members via email. So it was actually quite an easy way to come to and work through this elections process. My very first meeting, it was a casual meeting. I really enjoyed that because it was just more about us as people getting together and saying hello. And I really, really appreciated that. I, of course, gave a little bit of an overview of my research interest area and what I wanted to pursue as a topic. But that was about it for that very first meeting. It was really the second meeting that I would say was more substantial, and we talked about the candidacy exam process. But before we met for the second time, speaking to Dr. Judith Scanlon in particular, she was very instrumental in providing me with a structure for a PhD summary that sort of spanned the area, my topic area, a little bit about the literature, some of the coursework, well, all of the coursework that I did, assignments that I would have completed in the courses that I took towards the PhD. And I actually took all of those pieces in this structure, and then I also actually created a virtual portfolio from that structure. So other people that I know that have had Dr. Scanlon have done some written versions of that structure. I very, very particularly wanted to do this virtual portfolio because I'm interested in using an arts-based tool such as a digital journal or a virtual portfolio, and this really meant something for me to try it myself. And so I used a product called Live Binders to create my virtual portfolio. And it's basically the same thing. It just happens to look like a virtual binder with tabs for all of those areas of the structure proposed by Dr. Scanlon to provide that PhD summary for my thesis committee. So I really appreciated this exercise, and it really helped me to articulate to the thesis committee members who I was, what I was interested in, and it gave them something to talk about in terms of the candidacy exam, questions, references, and so on. And I think for me, in that second meeting, providing that information before the second meeting and before we had the conversation about the candidacy exams was really, really key, because it was the way that the thesis committee members also understood how they could come to the conversation and give me some of the directions based on their expertise areas. Okay, oh, and then I also wanted to say that this second meeting was in the spring, and it was good to go through the timeline because it was leading up to plotting out doing the candidacy exam in the fall. And in fact, I ended up choosing November, and we all actually ended up choosing November as a good timeline. So this would have been the spring, and then I had time over the summer to create my reference list, and then I would want to do my candidacy exam in the month of November is what I chose, and what worked well for everybody. And then in creating the reference list, I found it helpful to organize the references by subject matter, such as methodology, substantive area, theoretical perspectives, methods, and knowledge translation, so that we all had a good understanding of a span of the articles. And if there were any questions or any thoughts around adding some more, it was easier for the thesis committee members to see the article spread according to the different subject matter areas. And my members only wanted a reference list. I was not asked to provide an annotative bibliography, but it may vary. So please ask your own thesis committee members as to what is required or expected of you when you're submitting your listing of articles. I also understand that the number of articles might vary from committee member groups to others. As I have spoken to peers, I had about 70 articles in total that I provided in my reference list. I know other peers that I've spoken with had smaller numbers and larger numbers, so it's really up to you to have that conversation with your thesis committee members as to what is expected of you. I would say that as the best way to really gauge what you want to search for. I was also really happy to know that when I was writing my exam responses, that they were my thesis committee was okay with me adding other articles and resources as it came up in my candidacy writing, and that was okay, and that's going to happen. And sometimes it even happens that new articles come up during the time that you're writing, so of course you want to be able to add some of those resources that may not have actually existed on your previous reference list search. Okay. What else can I tell you about that? I sent my reference list at the end of August then, so after that spring meeting, had the summer, sent it in at the end of August, and I also met with my committee members in September. And so then just wanted to ask if there was any further questions or articles that I should include in terms of my reference list, or areas that I should enhance. And they didn't have any concerns or needs for me to provide further resources in the different subject matter areas. So having no further concerns, they felt comfortable to go on then with that reference list to craft the candidacy exam questions for me. So that span of time was over September, October, and they then told me at that September meeting that I would receive my candidacy questions at the beginning of November and have the month of November to write my candidacy exam papers. A couple of highlights in terms of preparing for the written portion, I made sure I took time off work. That was a big one. I was working full time and in the capacity of associate dean at the time, and it was just a lot to manage if I were to be writing and try to have that focused writing time. So I'm not sure the type and the nature of the work that you do, whether you're full-time or part-time. I don't think it would matter whether you were full-time or part-time. I would say if you could take that month off to write, please, I encourage you highly to take that month off. It was extremely valuable to have that focused writing time without the distraction of work. I also, because of working full-time, I found that not only was I writing during that month of candidacy, I was rereading articles, because I think when we work and we have other distractions, yes, we read articles, but we don't necessarily get to the depth of understanding of those articles or resources as we would when we have that focused time. So that's the reason why I think I really, really appreciated having that 1 month off of work. And I also did ground my preparation in my reference article lists. So all of those resources were a part of my prep for those candidacy papers. I did also look at a few papers that I had written in my previous coursework, just to prepare my mind, to refresh my memory on things like theoretical perspectives and resources that really came to mind through the assignment work that I had completed. What else can I tell you about prep? It was more, actually, I'm going to go into the writing timeline. So in that 1 month time, because I think somebody had said, well, how did you split your time? And in speaking with other peers, we talked about the idea of the 50-50 split. So you have to choose to write 2 responses based on the questions that you receive. So you'll receive 3 questions and you get to choose 2. And so you have 2 responses to make and papers to write. And you think in your mind you're going to do 50-50, and that's a very logical starting point. What ended up happening for me is that I wrote probably more like 60-40, because the first paper that I wrote was on a theoretical perspective, and I find theoretical perspectives a little more heavy thinking. And so I found myself making sure that I was really thinking clearly about what I was writing in terms of theoretical perspective. And so it took me a little longer to write that paper versus the second paper on my substantive area. So but I did still do that 2-week checkpoint. And where am I? Am I done? Am I feeling good? Have I already thought about and crafted the outline for the second paper, so I'm not scrambling to find the time to complete that second paper? So I think that's a really important thing, whether or not you find it to be exactly that 50-50 split or a slightly different ratio of time spent on each paper, because you may feel comfortable with one subject matter area versus another. You'll get a feel for that. Think about that though, and reflect on that. Reflect on how you want to cue yourself to creating the outlines for the papers, and any other cues like calendar cues to get you to say, you need to stop now so that you can check A, B, and C and setting up your second paper. So just some thoughts around that. Don't forget to also allot some time for proofreading, of course, and maybe even asking someone else to proofread the papers for you. That's always a really valuable exercise as well, because we don't always pick up all of our little errors because they are so minor. So it's really something that I would also encourage you to allot time for in that 1 month period. What else can I tell you about the timeline? Oh, I definitely appreciated the full month of writing. Sometimes people have said, oh, well, do you really need a whole month to write 2 papers? And they're about 20 to 25 pages each. And yeah, you know, there are times where you can say, yeah, I don't need that time, but I felt like there was a lot at stake. It's a high stakes assessment for us, and I really did appreciate that full month of being able to write, to think, to take a break, to ask, like I said, ask somebody else to have a look at this, to proof it. Those were all things that take some time. So it's not just about the writing furiously period. It's about being thoughtful. It's about taking the time to look at other resources to make sure you feel good about what you're thinking and saying. So that full month was definitely appreciated. It only took about 2 weeks for me to get my results, and it was in December, before December or fall break. I did wait till the new year to arrange my oral defense. My prep for my oral defense was just going through my candidacy papers, because the questions for the oral defense are based on your responses. So there's nothing they're expecting from you that is beyond the parameters of what you have written. These included looking for thoughts that in my papers that I thought, oh, maybe that's a little vague in what I said, or I introduced some new terminology or new ideas, or questioned previously established thoughts. So these were some things I went through in my papers to see what might be questioned in terms of those sort of areas. I also asked my husband to look at my papers and see if he thought there were areas that he would question me on because of the vagueness or something that was new, that maybe I used a little bit of extra jargon or something like that he wouldn't have understood, and that might have been a point of questioning as well. So that was also a good way to prep for the oral defense. You don't receive questions in advance, because it is really about you having a conversation and being asked about your knowledge base in real time. And I think that's supposed to be a gauge of the depth of your knowledge in your areas. So I actually thought that was a really great way to go from the written into a conversation. And it really did, for me, feel like a conversation with my committee members. I really appreciated the style. So the style for me was, it wasn't just about being questioned, because we did do the questions, and we did like a round and 2 rounds of questions. Each committee member had about 15 minutes, I would say, to be able to ask a question and get the response from me. And then we went around a couple of times, and it was about an hour. But it was more than that, because I think having experienced thesis committee members, they really wanted to put me at ease. They didn't want it to seem like a grilling session. So it seemed more conversational. There were points where some of the members would even say, hey, you know, I know this is beyond the scope of your papers, but I thought about this idea, and maybe you want to look at this further. And we chatted a little bit about that, and I could offer some thoughts around their expanded ideas for me to explore. And it was really, really collegial, and I really appreciated this style of conversation, I'm going to call it, in addition to asking the questions for the examination purpose. So just something that I really wanted to say, that I didn't feel as stressed as I thought I would feel once we started getting into the oral defense. So I can't say enough good things about how that oral defense went from my experience, and how at ease I was put during that time period. And probably took about an hour, I would say, and then I left for about 15 minutes and then came back. And by the way, when I say that, everything was done remotely, like it was pandemic conditions, and I was still living in Red Deer, and being a distance student, it also worked in my favor to have an online version of the oral defense, which probably isn't, is an option now, but probably is going to be an in-person event for you. And I look forward to my research proposal oral defense to be in person. So I think if you can have an in-person conversation, it's going to be a very, very, very comfortable versus maybe even the remote in case there's any tech issues or something like that. So I would say look forward to having that in person if you can. I just want to look at my notes for a moment to see if there was anything else. Yeah, I think that was pretty much it for the actual oral defense. I hope that it was helpful to hear about my experience. In terms of preparing for and writing the oral, the written exam and the oral defense, I hope that this has given you something to think about. And I just wanted to say one more time that I found this process to be very energetic, a thoughtful process, a thoughtful experience. I really appreciated that focus time of writing. I felt like it really deepened my learning of my own subject matter, of my own understanding of theoretical perspectives, of the methodology that I wanted to embrace, all of it. It was just such a great period of time to make sure that I felt really confident in the acquisition of knowledge required to be able to do my program of research. So in that way, I would say it's a real positive to go through a candidacy exam process, because it then sets you up really well for your the crafting of your research proposal and going onwards with your actual research work. So I see to me, this is a natural part of the process and a very, very important step or a milestone to complete. And I just wanted to say thank you to my thesis committee members. It's Dr. Donna Martin, Dr. Judith Scanlon, that are also my co-advisors, as well as Dr. Wanda Chernomis and Dr. Francine Morin from the Faculty of Education, all extremely supportive people for me. They continue to be a great source of guidance, of wisdom, of knowledge that I really need as I continue to pursue my PhD studies. Thank you guys, and I wish you all the best in your candidacy exams.